Good morning. This is Dr. Matthew Dunn, host of the Future of Email Marketing today. And my guest, I'm delighted to say, is April Mullen. April is the Director of Brand and Content Marketing at SparkPost. April, I'm so glad we finally get to connect and have this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And you're talking from St. Louis, is that correct?
Yep, I'm in flyover zone.
You're hardly. Talk about a historical city. For orientation, for starters, April, if people are not in the middle of email, they may not have heard of SparkPost, and anyone who's anywhere near email goes, "Oh yeah, SparkPost," because it's this unimaginably large entity. Talk a bit about the company just to orient people.
Yeah, so we've been around since 1999. We started as an MTA essentially, and now we've grown into deliverability analytics products. So we plan to expand our product suite. We now consider ourselves a delivery optimization platform.
Delivery optimization.
So,
That's good.
and
I
we
like
work
that.
with some of the world's biggest brands. We work with Zillow, Pinterest, a major US newspaper, which I cannot name,
Yeah.
but lots and lots of big logos.
Well, and lots of big email. I was browsing the SparkPost site just to update myself, and of course, it's gotten even bigger since I last looked. At 40, is it 40%
Yep.
of the email in the world goes through SparkPost? Like
Yep.
four, four, 4 to 5 trillion, was that the number?
Yep,
A
that's
year?
exactly right. Yeah. We send a we send a lot of email
Send a
and
lot
and
of email.
And what a lot of people don't know about us is that part of the reason that volume is so high is obviously we work with some big senders, but we
Sure.
also we power a lot of the cross-channel and email marketing clouds that you know and love.
Right.
Most of them work with us, and so we serve as the infrastructure to actually deploy their emails.
Well, I was gonna make a note about that because you said MTA, and my brain hadn't interpreted that. But for people watching who are in the middle of email marketing, or particularly if they're listening, message transfer agents handle the job of actually getting the message to the recipient. But that doesn't mean that the program you're using to set up an email marketing campaign is that MTA, correct?
Yeah. So think of it like a car. We're essentially the engine,
Okay.
versus some of the other technologies. They're using us as the engine, but
Mm-hmm.
they're putting all of the beautiful features for the driver and the cup holders and the tech in the dash, and essentially are just telling us when it's time to go, when to hit the accelerator.
Right, and I'll take your analogy and run with it. And Ford at some point and GM at some point found that they didn't have to build a different engine for every car. It's like, oh look, same V8 in that car, that car, that car, that car. You guys are for sure the big V8 of MTAs. Um, tell folks a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about your role specifically at SparkPost, because SparkPost puts out all this beautiful stuff, and I assume that you're completely responsible.
I wouldn't say I'm completely responsible. There's a whole team,
Yeah.
but I definitely, as the leader of brand and content, I'm in charge of ensuring that we grow our brand awareness. So
Hmm.
we're working on that. We just developed some new messaging that's going to be coming out, and we're going to be coming up with a new visual identity for the brand.
Oh,
So
really?
you're gonna see some
Oh,
exciting things. I
you're
haven't had the
keeping the orange, right?
I don't know. We'll
Don't know. We'll
see.
see.
We're
I
still
like it.
working. We're still working through it. But I mean, orange definitely does stand out. So there will probably be some form
Some
of
orange. Okay.
orange.
Phew, yeah.
Yeah. And I just took on the brand role, but I'm a subject matter expert here. So a lot of my
Yeah.
job is
Yeah.
to develop content and copy that will resonate with our end consumers and the people that we're trying to attract to the business, but
Yeah.
also our existing customers to make sure that they're getting the most out of email.
Well, you've got a very sophisticated customer base. Is that a fair statement?
It is, and
Yeah.
they're kind of a lot of different personas. So we have the marketing persona, the traditional, email marketer,
Mm-hmm.
senior level people in marketing that are signing the vendor contracts, but maybe don't understand email. They probably oversimplify email. They think it's easier than it is.
Mm-hmm.
We have technical buyers, especially on the sending side.
Yeah.
So we're talking to a lot of director VPs of IT. And then in the mid-market, we primarily focus on enterprise, but we do still serve mid-market. So then a lot of times in the mid-market, you might even talk to a C-level person.
Yeah.
So it's kind of complex to like try to figure out what the needs are for the different groups, but I feel like we're finally getting some traction. I've only been in the
Pretty big
company
traction.
for about a year and a half now, I think. It
Oh,
was
I didn't realize it
October.
was that recent. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I haven't been here too long, and then my role has evolved even since I got here.
Yeah.
And so, we're definitely trying to get the marketing engine fired, have a really solid content strategy, and to also enable our sales teams with the right talk tracks for the various people. Because I remember when I was on the buyer side, I was on the brand years ago,
Mm-hmm.
purchasing solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing made me cringe more than salespeople that would try to sell me solutions and oversimplify what I was buying and
Mm-hmm.
what my job was and what my needs were. So we're definitely working on all of that.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of job security to ensure that we're all up leveling. I would say that for anyone in email, really.
Well,
There's
one of the things about SparkPost in particular, I mean the MTA sector in general, but SparkPost in particular, partially because of your scale, cloud computing is seems like a recent buzzword. It's not that recent, but SparkPost was a cloud entity before anyone used the word. Fair?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we definitely had a lot of most of our stuff was on premise for a long time. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then we did move to the cloud and we brought the scale of on premise to
Oh
the
yeah,
cloud because
yeah,
we found a lot of companies were um they didn't want to manage on premise. They're
yeah.
like, I don't want to own this thing and have to update it and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where cloud really gives companies a lot of scale. And we have an interesting intersection of the two. Actually, a lot of people don't know this, but we actually have for our on-premise customers, they can actually scale up their volume using the cloud capabilities. So we call that hybrid. And then we bring
Yeah.
all the data together through our analytics products. So it's not like you're like have your reporting over here in the on-prem system and then you have your reporting in the cloud. We bring it all together so it
Okay.
feels like it's all kind of one consolidated interface for the tech people.
Yeah.
And that has really helped a lot of companies, especially
Interesting.
during COVID,
Yeah.
because a lot of companies were like, well, first of all, we're not on site. A lot of IT people are like,
Yeah.
we're working from home just like everyone else.
Yeah.
And some verticals, their email volume went up
Yeah.
dramatically.
Yeah.
And they needed to scale quickly. And they needed to scale without actually having to go on site and put racks in their
Right.
server room
Right. Right.
and be around other people. And so, we found that actually this hybrid capability really helped these customers that were on-prem scale. And it's kind of exciting. I feel like we need to be talking about that more, actually.
Well, I watched the cloud computing, the sort of generic cloud computing sector pretty careful, and Amazon, then Azure, and now Google have all come out with, oh, here's the box you can put on site, which you guys already had. Here's the box you can put on site that brings some of the capabilities, and it becomes essentially a smarter connection point to the cloud. And you're saying the on-prem piece of SparkPost became that, or has
Yeah.
become that.
Yeah.
Clever. And some of your longest running customers, I'm guessing, were on-prem folks, and now they're starting to
Yep.
migrate more to the cloud. I had the opportunity, gosh, a couple of years ago, back when we went to live conferences. Remember that? Did you
Yeah.
miss it, by the way?
Ugh, I
Yeah.
desperately miss it.
Yeah, yeah, weird. I never thought I'd say miss conferences, but I miss conferences. Um, uh, Campaign Genius, our booth was next door to the SparkPost booth at the last live EEC. So I got to hang out with some of your colleagues and talk major email geek with them. And the thing that struck me is that they were explaining was the analytics side of SparkPost is just It's ungodly big and almost impossible to wrap your head around. Talk about how smart SmartPost is.
Oh my gosh. So we say we have the deepest and broadest data set of any analytics provider in this space. And so
I'm sure.
we actually have analytics that go across not just like our actual sending infrastructure has really deep analytics. It was built that way.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, we probably have more data than our customers even use. We have something like 40 plus different types of data points that customers can pull in real time,
Wow.
um, via webhooks, so they can like actually, get a read really, really quickly. Um, but through some of our analytics products, we have, like we have our panel data, which we've done a lot of investigating. I know there have been some negative talk about panels, that the data is not really accurate, but we actually looked into it and we compared it with some data that we have from one of the ISPs.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually scarily accurate,
Wait,
because
expand for me. Panel is what?
consumer panels, so people who opt in to allow for their
Oh, okay.
emails to
Okay.
be monitored,
Yeah.
um, and we anonymize their identities. We
Yeah.
don't, if there's any personalization of the email, you'll see on the creative and the reports that it's fuzzed out,
Yeah.
but it's scarily accurate. So we see real consumer data. We also have some artificial intelligence that looks at modeling what potentially could happen with your send before you send it. We have the deepest set of spam trap monitoring. So it goes on and on and on. We have something like 8 to 10 different types of data. We're kind of arguing internally if it's 8 or 10, but it's a really deep data set that will tell you a level of detail on what happens to your emails after you hit send,
Hmm.
that you just won't find that depth anywhere else.
Wow. Wow. Fascinating. The panels, that's interesting. I didn't realize you did
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, so this is for email what what a Nielsen households were
Exactly.
for TV in their day, and you said you've looked into it and it's actually quite accurate.
It's quite accurate. Yep.
Fascinating. We all get emails, so we're all experts on email, right? Ha ha. But that's extraordinary for a particularly large company to be able to characterize what might happen before they hit a billion sends.
Yeah.
Expensive hobby that. Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Now, SparkPost technologically sits at least in part on top of AWS as well. See, I was next to your booth.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there's
Yes.
clouds on clouds.
There's clouds on clouds. Actually, Amazon recently did a case study on us.
Oh,
So
really? What did it read about?
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
read that.
I think it came out like 2 weeks ago. So
Okay.
yeah, it talks all about how that infrastructure is set up. But yeah, we do work with AWS. Happy customer.
Yeah. And as I recall from the conversation, highly specialized. What you guys
Hmm.
had built on top of AWS is like couldn't be done any other way now. It's evolved that much.
Yep, exactly.
So as a marketer, when you're working with a highly technical company and highly technical customers in at least some cases, and you've got the technical chops yourself, you've got to be in a translation job to a great extent to bring this into content form.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say I do rely on subject matter experts. George
Oh
Schlossnagel,
yeah. Oh wow.
our one of our founders,
Founders. Yeah.
he is brilliant, and he helps. He'll tell me the facts. Like, here's how it works. Here's what it does. And even sometimes our head of engineering will jump in and we'll kind of talk
Wow.
about like, how does this work? Because my team, we have to create visuals and infographics
Mm-hmm.
to explain how these things work. We
Mm-hmm.
recently worked on a client deck, and I had to work with our designer to visualize how our environment is set up.
Yeah.
And I feel like the team does a really good job of like, we talk about it and then I'll say, so if I'm hearing you right, this is how this works. Well, I never thought about it that way, but
Yeah.
yeah, that is
Yeah.
how that works. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I have the visual for you. So
Okay.
the team works really well together to like, we really hash things out and collaborate really well over here to make sure that we're explaining things in the best way possible, so that if you're a technical audience, you'll respect it and you'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, this is really cool. I get what's
Mm-hmm.
going on here.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a marketing audience, you also can understand it, and not that marketers are dumb. They're not. They're brilliant. But I actually think marketing is harder than ever. But it's in a way that's explainable, so they can put it in front of their C-level executive who may
Mm-hmm.
not go into the depth of detail
Mm-hmm.
and could explain it to them. And that's really the point.
Let's come back to marketing is harder than ever in a second, but a quick side trip. Uh, prior to the launch of Campaign Genius, I spent about 7 or 8 years creating explainer videos for a living.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've done that job that
Oh,
that you
wow.
just described of talking with the tech, the highly technical or the highly strategic or whatever the subject matter was, and saying, you need to explain it again because most people are not going to spend the 2 hours to understand this feature, and we've got to boil it down, simplify it without losing the essence of it. And that sounds like
Yeah.
that's the job the internal marketer gets to struggle with at a company like yours. Wow,
Yes.
it's not
Yeah.
easy, is it?
No, it's not. I've actually found in writing and visuals and everything
Mm-hmm.
that taking something complex and making it simple is one of the hardest parts of
It's
the
not.
job.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. Well, and getting it true, right? Getting it
Yeah.
accurate and true enough to catch the essence of the thing. Now, I'm curious to your reaction to this. What I found in doing that really wide range of companies was that the subject matter experts tended to be rotten at explaining their subject matter in that succinct, understandable to the other person form. They're too deep in it. They see all the pieces of it. They can't really step back from that very well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think that's why like it's good to have a cross section of people that can
Mhm.
collaborate on these things. And like I said, I'm really fortunate to have that here because we can ensure that through our various skill sets, we're coming up with something that's accurate. It's it goes deep enough, but it's
Mhm.
also high level enough.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Yeah, to the the heart of the matter, or the heart of the matter for a particular audience, particularly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and you touched on visuals. SparkPost got nice visual element to the brand already, at least to my mind. But with
thank
the
you.
the scale of data you're talking about, visualization must be key across the board. Marketing, actual product, internal communication, everything. Yes.
Yep. So we did on our cloud sending product, we actually just redesigned the UI
Hmm.
because we found that as it became more complex with all of the data and reports and things that we were able to provide,
Hmm.
that the UI was getting more complicated.
Yeah.
So we have an amazing user experience team, and they've taken a lot of that really complex data and they've
Yeah.
now harnessed it into like very easy to use intuitive reports.
Yeah.
It's
Visualizations.
visual. It's actually really pretty. There's a lot of white space.
Yeah.
It's also like modernized. I mean,
Yeah.
that's important too.
Yeah.
In technology, you have to make sure your interfaces are modernized and
Yeah.
easy to use. And so, yeah, we've definitely put a lot of effort there.
Yeah. Well, and you've got a background in art, so this must be
I do.
particularly a resonating thing for you. Yes.
Yeah, I do. I actually studied art history in undergrad.
I knew this. I was going to ask you about this. How did you get from there to here?
Oh my gosh. Well, the simple answer is I graduated with an art history degree
Hmm.
and realized, oh, I don't come from a wealthy family. Like,
Yeah, got to make a living.
I have to make a living. So I thought, I really like observing the world around me. And a lot of what you do in art is just writing about what you see and what
Well
the
put.
artist was intending
Hmm.
and context of the time that it was created. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I feel like I could do marketing. And this was like
Good for
early
you.
in the digital age where like no one was really learning about digital in school.
Hmm.
So I interviewed for like a junior level coordinator role and I was supporting an analyst on email. I set up Bizarre Voice site reviews. I worked on comparison shopping feeds. I worked in affiliate marketing, and
Oh, wow.
supporting all of these various people on my team. I learned so much. And then that's when I was like, I really want to do email. And then it kind of went from there.
No kidding. What favorite art history like period or form?
I really like 19th century French because it was just such a crazy time in Paris in particular. With a lot, there's actually a lot of Americans that were over there,
Yeah.
having like this cafe
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a naughty time too. A lot of partying.
Oh, yeah.
The Montmartre district was just swarming with all of these amazing artists. So I'm a huge fan of Henri. It's probably Henri
Only.
Toulouse-Lautrec.
Oh, yeah.
He was actually not considered a fine artist at
Nope.
the time.
Street
He was
guy,
a
kind of.
he was a sign maker. Like companies were like, I need a sign for my theater, my theater debut or my store, and he created all of these signs.
Yeah.
But I am fascinated by his work. I just absolutely love it. So, and I'm also a huge fan of Paris.
He himself was dwarfish, like
He was
small?
he was dwarfish, and yeah, he was a little person, and he had a lot of health problems.
Yeah, I remember
So
that.
some of that came out in his work as well. Yeah, he's an interesting character, but I love that. Yeah,
And the people in the people in his work in his portraiture. I don't know if it's intentionally portraiture, but very wide span of walks of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting one to focus on. Yeah, you're not in the fine art pantheon, at least not at the time, right?
Yep, exactly. And
Strong
that's what I
narrative
love.
sense.
Yeah, strong narrative sense and very much tied to the culture of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you walk around the Montmartre part of Paris, you can almost feel the energy of that time, even today. So it's fabulous. It's fascinating.
And then you get to bring that back to bear on what, things that would be unimaginable for then, and we do it all the time. Oh, you can send a message across the planet. Send, right?
Right, exactly.
What?
Yeah.
Wow, nice. I like that, and I think the way you articulated it, right? The just observe and understand, context and the times and the culture. Is a great background for marketing, and then actual business MBA time as well.
Yeah. So then I went on to get my MBA. I didn't really have to, but I really wanted that business acumen, and I wanted to. So I, took accounting and finance. And funny thing, I took all of my accounting and finance courses first because those were the things I was most concerned about. And I said, if I can't finish accounting and finance, then I'm not going to sink all this money into the whole program.
Yeah.
But I did well in both. Finance, not as well as accounting, but accounting, I got all A's, which I surprised myself, but I had to work very hard at it.
Yeah.
And then I was able to go on and finish the program, and I was glad to have that background.
Nice. My wife got an MBA. In fact, we met and weren't married at the time. She went off and did an MBA, so I got to sort of hear what that was like. Oh, yeah. You work your tail off on those.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. The finance and accounting for her, that was I think that not her favorite part as well. She liked the operations stuff for some reason. She's like, God, that's fascinating. It's like big
operations was great.
Work. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I actually like statistics as well. I learned because it makes sense
what you're doing.
Yeah.
Big data, statistics.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense of the world, right? In a different way. Yeah. Have you stayed career-wise in the Midwest? You call it flyover. I love the Midwest, but have you stayed in the Midwest for a long span now?
Yeah, so I'm from here.
Neat.
And in my 20s, I met, as a lot of Midwesterners do, you meet the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with in your 20s. We marry young here.
Yeah.
So I married an amazing guy here in St. Louis, and Um, so we decided to stay here. We had talked about potentially going to California. There was a period of time where I was trying to get him to go to New York because I was doing a ton of business up there.
Yeah.
And we decided to stay here because how cost of living is affordable. Our family's here, and we're really not. You're really in the modern age, like just an airplane away from wherever you want to go. So we are. When COVID is not a thing, we are active travelers. We are not afraid of going out and getting passport stamps and like jetting off and going to some faraway land. We love adventures. So
Now, I usually do the speed round at the end, but since you brought it up, and since you're a traveler, favorite place?
oh gosh, that's a hard one. Um, I think I've really liked probably Hong Kong the most,
Oh, wow, interesting.
only because I was expecting a city like New York,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize I hadn't read up on it. I didn't really know a whole lot about Hong Kong before we went.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's actually quite beautiful. It's
Really?
yeah, the way it's positioned against the
Spectacular
South China
harbor.
Sea, spectacular harbor. It was actually cleaner than I was expecting, and then it has like this peak that is you're literally over the clouds when you get to the top. It's just stunning. And then like the distinctiveness of the Kowloon side versus the Hong Kong side, and how they like it feels completely different. And then the food and the people and the
Oh,
markets.
wow.
It was a blast. It was a real blast.
Oh, that's great. I was expecting you to say Paris, honestly. So
Well, I do love
awesome.
Paris. I've been
Yeah.
to Paris multiple times.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I do love it, but I know it's kind of cliche to love Paris. I mean, who goes to Paris and doesn't love it? But
Yeah.
I think Hong
Hong
Kong
Kong.
was
Well,
great.
fascinating. And a city that's up for some major change right now. So I
Yeah,
imagine by the next time you get to go there, it'll be even a different feel. Not that the setting will change
yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
Wow, good for you. Well, the pandemic, yeah, as we're talking here, end of March, hopefully we're on the wind down side of this
Yeah,
thing, and we'll see how we reinvent the world after this. But I do think the handcuffs of place and work have been snapped, so I don't think you'll have any problems remaining in remaining in the Midwest and
that's
continuing to do
right.
stuff all over the country. That's so everyone caught up with you, basically, is what I'm saying.
Exactly.
um, let's jump topics for a second because I want to focus most of the conversation on email, though I love the side trips even more. Women of Email, you're a co-founder.
Yep.
Explain about the organization and what it's done and where you see it going next, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we founded it because we saw that there were not that many women on conference stages, and we're like,
Hmm.
why? Only Influencers several years ago had done some research, and they showed that the split was about 50-50. It was like 49-51 men.
Hmm.
Um, and so we're like, there are a lot of women in email jobs. Why aren't more of them on conference stages? And so
Yeah.
um, actually, over an email, interestingly enough, Jen Capstraw emailed me, Laura Atkins, Kristen Bond, and said, hey, what are we going to do about this? Because Kristen had written an article for Only Influencers
Hmm.
and I think it was titled something like, where are all the women email marketers?
Hmm.
And so over an email, Jen's like, what do we want to do about this? And that's when we decided to form Women of Email. And since then we've placed, I think at this point, probably hundreds of women at conferences. It's hard to like go to a conference and not see more gender parity. And now
Good.
we're trying to focus
Excellent.
more on also having more racial diversity.
Hmm.
We realized initially that we weren't as intersectional as we needed to be. So
Hmm.
we definitely have a lot of emphasis on making sure that other marginalized groups are also represented in the space. So where we see it going, we want to broaden
Hmm.
to elevate, not just women, but women that come from other marginalized groups as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
Um, and we've grown. We're about, I think we're over 5,000 members at this point globally.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you do the did you do the whole create a nonprofit? You know, you've got a
Yep.
board. Like there's some organization.
Yep.
It's not just an email thread. Pun intended.
Exactly. Exactly. We are a 501c3, excuse me.
Cool.
501c3 nonprofit.
Yeah.
That's US. So it doesn't really help us in other parts of the world, but
Yeah.
maybe at some point we could get organized in other countries as well. We have members from all over the world. We're actually on 6 continents. We have members from 6 continents, which is
Nice.
crazy.
Nice.
So if you know anyone in Antarctica, let us know. And we can say all 7.
Email's probably vital in Antarctica. Think about it, right?
You don't want to go outside. You
Right. You
need
don't
to.
go outside. It's not like you got a net connection and you can sit and watch Netflix. Like you're probably communicating via that good old fashioned async beast that we all know and love. um, if you were if you had a chance to talk to the young April Mullen and say there's a career track in email, what would you say?
I think I would have believed it
Yeah.
because in college, remember, well, listservs are still a thing, but remember when listservs were like referred to by
Oh yeah.
name as
Yeah.
listservs and it
Yeah.
was like the thing to do? But like
Yeah.
back in college, I was a part of a social organization that had a listserv, and I was actually voted the biggest listserv geek of that club. And so, like, I've always been fascinated by email.
hmm
So I probably would have been surprised that I would go into email,
hmm
but I also wouldn't have been surprised if that makes sense. Like I would have been like, "Oh yeah, okay, that
I
makes
can
sense."
see
I
that.
do love communicating.
Yeah. 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 And it's the oldest and still in some ways one of the more stable um, digital channels for marketing well, for communication period, but for marketing in particular.
Yeah.
One of my constant theses about email, one of the reasons I still really like the space is that it's not owned by somebody. Like
Yeah.
there's not a Facebook or a Google parked at the front end saying all
Yeah.
roads must go through us and you must pay a toll or you can't use this. It's an open,
Yeah.
it's a set of open standards and anybody can jump on board. I mean, SparkPost
Yeah.
carved out their own path through this thing without having to be beholden to another entity to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I call it the channel of the people for that reason.
There you go. I like that. I like that. Yeah. I was joking with someone the other day and I said civil media. We've got enough social media. Email, it's got to be a civil
Yeah.
conversation or I'll just unsubscribe, right?
Yeah.
I stay in control of who I hear from, and that's still true even at the scale you guys are sending
Yeah.
email for your customers. Like it's still got to be a meaningful message, or snip away it
Absolutely.
goes. Yeah. And
Exactly.
you mentioned listservs. I mean, let's talk about what's happening now with email. Like Twitter acquired, what was the name of the company? Started with a
Review.
Review. Thank you. So
Yeah.
the email newsletter, old fashioned as that sounds,
Yeah.
is having a day in the sun. What do you think?
I'm excited about it. I think it's super fascinating and it shows just like how important email is and
hmm
how it will have longevity. I believe it will. For one of the reasons was what you just said about it's not owned by anyone.
hmm
But for two, it feels like there is a situation happening. So Twitter bot review, Facebook supposedly developing some kind of newsletter tool, or maybe they've launched it. I don't know, but I heard a couple months ago that they were developing something to meet Twitter's review. And then Morning Brew, it's basically just a newsletter,
hmm
sold for 75 million in Q4 last year. So it feels like there is an intersection of people wanting content from sources that they trust.
hmm
So if you look at like a lot of journalists have gone independent and they are selling access to their daily Substack
Yep.
where they're just sending out like communications as they write things. You've got all this stuff happening with Twitter, with Facebook, with newsletter companies being bought up for crazy amounts of money for just being a newsletter.
hmm
um, it feels like there is the intersection of people that want content that is curated by sources that they trust. So I think the algorithms of Facebook, of Twitter, of, those algorithms are, I think people are starting to be skeptical of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they want just pure human to human content that feels organic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we have that combined with the fact that the world, I feel like, is moving toward kind of a publisher model. So I like to tell marketers, like, you need to think of yourself as being a publishing model, even if you're not,
Yeah.
speaking on the business side,
Yeah.
even if you're not, a publishing company, you have to think of yourself as a publisher,
Mm-hmm.
and organizing your
Yeah.
content, and
Yeah.
newsletters often the way
Yeah.
that you drive that. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited, and when you think about how, there's a lot of mistrust in the media and news, it's becoming even more important for consumers to have information provided by sources that they trust, and email seems to be the right vehicle to deliver that. And the cool thing about email, because you could say, well, why can't they just use social media to deliver this news? Well, you look at some parts of the world, like I think Facebook in Australia, you can't even get news on Facebook. But for two, again, the algorithm's there.
Mm-hmm.
But also, people want to be able, like, if you see something on your news feed in Facebook, or you see something on your Twitter feed, if you see it but you don't have time to engage with it and you want to come back to it later, it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to do on social media. It's hard to,
Good
like, go
point.
back and find it. Like,
Yeah.
how many
Really
times
good
have
point.
you
Yeah.
scrolled through something and been like, dang it, where did I see
Yeah.
that?
Where
And
did I
you
see
can't
that? That's a good point.
and
Yeah.
you can't find it.
Yeah.
Versus, I feel like the mailbox providers like Gmail and Yahoo have done a fantastic job of making it, well, I would say especially Gmail,
Mm-hmm.
of, like, organizing your emails and making it easy for you to come back to. At bare minimum, you just come back to your inbox and you scan it until you find it. But you
Right.
can
Right.
also organize and folder.
Filter and folder. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it gives you the opportunity to, like, get it, see it, triage it, come back to it. It's kind of like on your time, in your way,
Mm-hmm.
versus other channels. It's very, like, disruptive in the moment. You got to act on it now, and if you
Yeah.
don't, you'll use it or
Really.
lose it kind of
Yeah.
attitude.
Yeah. Good point.
And I think that's part of the reason why email is having such a day, and in particular newsletters.
Yeah. Let's riff on the newsletter thing for a minute, because I agree with you, and I think it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's an intersection of more than a few important things, and it's popping up in this humble looking channel called newsletter. You mentioned Substack, and for people listening who aren't familiar with Substack, Substack is essentially a infrastructure for a writer to go into business for themselves via email, right?
Yeah.
The most famous recent case, a journalist from, I believe, Vox, got up and left, and Vox is waving goodbye to one of their star reporters, and he says, "Look, I write enough, and I write well enough, and I have enough people who follow me to say I'm going to go hang out my shingle as me, and people
Yeah.
can subscribe directly to hear from me." And he's he's doing just fine as a solo business. And Substack is kind of the whole infrastructure for him. He doesn't have the technical headaches of setting all of that up. Like, kind of fair description of this
Yeah.
newsletter engine thing. I mean, Twitter bought a version of a business like that, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
we get the long form. You can take the time to think. People can come back to it later without someone else moderating content in their face, as you mentioned. Critical point. Um, it also seems like an end run for what we used to call journalism. To me,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, that's a
Absolutely.
big shift. That's a very
Yeah.
big shift.
It's definitely a big shift, and I'm excited to watch it. I'm going to continue to keep an eye on this because I think it really is it's a big moment for email
Yeah. Yeah.
because of all of these changes happening.
There's a not minor problem. I think this was an OI, only influencers discussion. And for listeners who aren't familiar with only influencers, quick plug onlyinfluencers.com. April and I are both on that list. It's another terrific community kind of at the heart of email. Someone posed a question about paywalling
Mm-hmm.
content on OI, and someone else responded that the fascinating thing about an email newsletter is it sort of combines the paywall and the delivery. Oh, you, April, are on my paid subscribers list. Bam, you get your delivery. You don't have to go sign in. You don't
That's a
have to
great
remember to
point.
go do it. You've already said, I want it. You might have already said Substack, I'll pay for it. You'll get it. I start my morning almost every morning reading Ben Thompson's Stratechery, which is a paid newsletter. He's been at it for a number of years, had to build the infrastructure himself initially, but I shell out money to hear what Ben Thompson has to say just about every day,
That's
happily, because
great.
he's really smart and he writes great stuff, and it falls in my areas of interest, and I don't have to sign in and all that other stuff. It just shows up in the inbox. I can go back to them later, as you said. Like, yeah, it's the virtues of email that made it look old fashioned have become distinctive values again
Yeah,
in a noisy world.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. And again, shout out to the mailbox providers that have made managing email easier. I think
yeah.
that has really helped with all of this.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. Back in the oh my gosh, my Outlook, Outlook PST is going to explode. Days you'd never do that. It's got to be easier. And everyone's stack of saved emails is completely distinctive.
Yep,
Fascinating, right? And
it
and big.
definitely is.
We've also gotten rid of the storage problem, which is a big deal. And
Yeah.
in the inbox providers and Gmail, Office 365, it's like you don't sit there worrying about, oh, I don't have enough space for my email anymore. You're just like, whatever.
Yeah. I just pay $1.99 a month to Gmail and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
basically, I mean, if I'm spending more, if I have more emails in my inbox than the $1.99 will cover, I have more problems
Yeah,
than
you have more
storage.
problems than that. I love it. So look forward a bit, prognosticate a bit, and I do want to touch on your notion that every company or every marketer is a publisher, because I think that relates to this. Where's marketing, and particularly email as a marketing channel, going from here? What's the cutting edge going to be? What's
Oh
what's
gosh.
uh,
Uh, well, you know how I feel about AMP, and
mhm,
it may not necessarily be AMP as the technology, but I am really passionate about this idea that email being the preloaded app on your phone,
mhm,
everyone already has it on their phone. They just enter some credentials and everything kind of floats in. I'm really passionate about this notion of emails becoming more app like themselves
mhm,
and the conversion being able to take place right within the email itself.
mhm. Yeah,
Um, so I hope we solve that as an industry. And again,
yeah.
it doesn't have to be AMP. I actually have a friend in Europe who's developing a product right now that will actually have a lot of the capabilities of AMP, but is not AMP. So I'm excited to see where that goes. I try to
Cool.
like keep a pulse on what's going on
Yeah.
there. So I think marketing is going to have this big shift where the um, if you think about like the way that digital works, it's a lot of like channels driving to the website or an app to
Yeah.
be the home base.
Yeah.
And like people are like, oh, well, what are your email conversions like? Well, email conversions don't actually happen.
Right.
The
Right.
conversions happen on the website. The
Yeah.
referral source is
Yeah.
email.
Yeah.
I think there's a world where, just like has happened with payments and shopping,
Hmm.
I see a future where in-channel conversion is going to be a lot more prominent, and I think email could be a strong place for that. We're already seeing it in social feeds where you can buy right from your social feed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think that will come to email at some point. I just hope it's a technology that like can be widely supported.
Yeah.
I also hope that it leads to some email standardization. So like not having all these different disparate code bases and
Yep.
finicky rendering and all of that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
um
Yeah.
so I
We're
think
more than overdue for that.
Yeah. So I think the we will move from having this mindset of selling clicks in channels
Yeah.
as marketers to optimizing within the channel, but our challenge is going to be, we used to say, just give enough of a teaser or content or
Yeah.
imagery to get them to click through and then let the landing page do the work.
Hmm.
I think our big challenge is going to be how do we get them to do the work right? How does the channel in front of them do the work with minimal words and copy? And
Hmm.
I think that's where things like interactivity, like things that you've been really good at, um, you know, making sure that that interactivity is there, but is still, it's not too much, but it's enough. I think that's going to be
Yeah.
our challenge. That's going to be the dance we're going to have to do.
I yeah. I agreed. It's like there's such an exciting opportunity there. The thing I find myself, and this is like separate from the particular things that we're doing at Campaign Genius. I hope that we can take that forward, expand the possible in email, but do it on a standards basis so
Yes.
that we raise all of the boats, including the big ones stuck in the Suez Canal. There you go. Had to work that.
So timely.
They just got it free, by the way.
Well, it was like it was free, then it got stuck again,
Did it
and then
really?
and then I think it's free again. Yeah, the winds like pushed it back on the bank after they freed it. But
Oh
anyway,
no! Oh yeah, the winds have got to be horrible there. Abraham Lincoln had a patent. I'm not making this up. Abraham Lincoln had a patent on what was essentially called a camel on a rig to uh, put floaters on the outside of a boat to raise it up when the water was shallow. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, why are they not putting camels on this thing and basically making it float more? And
yeah.
I'm sure there was a lot of high paid talent working on it, and I'm just commencing from the side. But no, back to the standards thing. Yeah. Email, and we talked about this, and we had an opportunity to talk about this, gosh, almost a year ago. That you've got some motion forward with much richer interactivity, but specifically only in some of the inbox providers. So the thing I'm hoping we can get back to working on and agreeing on is how to do that like across the board. Email, we're fighting
Yeah.
20-year-old HTML. If we update it, let's update it universally, get
Yes.
support from from everybody. And here's a critical thing in that mix: not lose the civil, not lose the privacy, and I'm in control side of it.
Yes.
I do not want my inbox spying on me.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's gonna take work. It'll take work from, how do I put this? One of the not visible things you're paying a really good vendor for is to get people to participate in things like standards committees, to participate in things like Women for Email,
Yeah.
so that the industry broadly gets better, gets richer, gets smarter, improves. It's like that's part of the cost of running the thing to continue to move that capability set up and forward, not just deliver that one message, but think about what the messages need to look like in 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping in 10 years the experience will be very different. We shall see.
We shall see. We shall see. Yeah. It's like, and it's interesting that newsletter, we're talking about the newsletters. Like that's just writing, right? It's ASCII text. There's nothing
Yeah.
about that we couldn't have done in
Sure.
delivery 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But now the forces and factors there to make that valuable in a new and different way.
Yeah.
Would I pay for would I pay for a visual every day? Absolutely. Would I
Yeah.
pay for a video every day? Well, right now email can't play video, so I won't do that yet. I'd be
Yeah.
clicking through to a website. Wow. Okay, rest of the speed round. I know the answer to the first one. I asked people dogs, cats, both or neither, and you're going to say dogs. Am I right?
Yes, I have
Yeah.
2 dogs.
And you were involved with a nonprofit that helps dogs, if I recall right, from your LinkedIn.
I've been involved with several. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was on the board of a group that advocated for mixed breed shelter dogs. I've volunteered at a couple no kill shelters in the area.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm I send them money. Like,
Yeah.
yes,
Yay for dogs.
I love the dogs. I love cats too, but my mom's allergic, so.
Okay. Is that your guitar hanging on the wall?
It is my guitar, but I do
Musician.
not play. I'm not a musician. I am a
Okay.
music appreciator.
Okay. Okay. Well, next time we're at a live conference, we should have a chance to go listen, at least listen to some live music. I heard karaoke is a thing in the email conferences. Is that true?
I don't know that I have seen that,
Okay.
but I'm not surprised.
Dangerous
So
thesis.
I think that would be hilarious.
Yeah.
And with a couple cocktails, I might be convinced to try to.
There
I
you go.
don't know that people would be entertained in a good way, though.
We already hit favorite place, Hong Kong. You definitely raised that one up on my list with your rave review of that. Favorite book or author?
Oh gosh. Right now, I really am I'm into very practical knowledge of marketing. So I really am loving the book right now. Obviously Awesome by April Dunford, where she talks about product positioning. Um, she's just fabulous in the way that she positions it. Obviously, being a product positioning expert
Hmm.
is just so great and very. She's very. She teaches you how to be very user focused. So
Nice,
yeah,
nice. Yeah, because it's harder and harder to get in the head, isn't it? As a marketer, it's harder to get through the noise and
yeah,
find the engagement that turns into a conversation in a relationship,
absolutely.
especially at the kind of big scale that you're playing at. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
But personal, not professional. I'm a huge fan of audiobooks, autobiography audiobooks read by the writer.
Oh, interesting.
So I can't pick a favorite. I'm
David
constant.
McCullough.
Yeah, I just constantly listen to um, autobiographies that are recorded, and I've like read both of the Obamas, and lots and lots and lots of authors that have written their own biopics
Yeah,
and
yeah.
are reading it. It's just lovely, like hearing them tell their story. But I
Well,
like
that's
listening to those.
there's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down, but what you just touched on, like the value of the voice, right as Clubhouse has sort of exploded and
Ah,
people are
yeah.
clamoring to get in and listen to someone talk fundamentally.
Yeah.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah, I actually really like Clubhouse, but I see that Facebook's version of that, I
Trying to
forgot what
clone
they
it.
call it. It's actually I actually like or the Twitter version, not Facebook.
Twitter
The
version.
Twitter version I like because it's everyone can access it. Not everyone can access Clubhouse. You have
Right.
to
Right.
be it's like iPhone only right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And invite. I think it's invite only, at least at this stage in
It's
time.
invite
Yeah.
only. Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I had the same eye roll for me. Like, oh come on.
Right, right.
We did a Clubhouse panel for OI on something, and someone wangled and it had an extra invite, threw it my way. But literally, the thing has sat gathering dust on my phone since then. So
Yeah.
the fact that Twitter's headed there so quickly, which wonderful, nice to see something new out of them.
Yeah.
Because Tweet's been around for a few years. Is there a voice publishing play for marketers?
For sure. We're actually seeing a lot of podcasts
Yep.
really taking off.
Yep.
There are actually a lot of email. I mean, this is obviously an email podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a place for people because I actually at SparkPost we did a couple of like video series,
Hmm.
but we didn't enable them as podcasts. And I have people reaching out to me, so we plan to eventually like turn this all into a
Make a
podcast.
podcast. Okay. Nice.
Because people want to be able to like do other things like work out on the treadmill or wipe in their kitchen counters. Like that's my favorite thing to do when I'm like cleaning up my kitchen is like listening to a podcast.
Well,
And
that makes
so
total
I
sense.
think the portability of podcasting and
Hmm.
listening
Hmm.
is something that people really like, especially when we're staring at screens all day. It's nice to like listen, just listen and to be able to multitask
Mm-hmm.
while listening.
Mm-hmm.
I actually listen to podcasts also when I'm gardening and working out in my yard. I love doing yard work. I'm a weirdo. I don't want to pay somebody to do it. My husband's like, we
Now you
should
got
just
the
pay
green
people. I'm
thumb.
like, no, I like to be outside. This
Good
is
for you.
my outside time. So that's my podcast time.
Interesting. Well, we've got the, as you said, portability. So the delivery part of it is pretty easy, and earbuds and Bluetooth, ubiquitous. So that part is pretty easy getting the signal in there. But the the luxury of a longer engagement, right? Actually listening to Barack Obama reading his book. For my wife was listening to that, that distinctive voice. It's like my head would
Yeah.
jerk around. It's like, oh, that's Obama talking.
And
Yeah.
then to hear him curse, like, oh my goodness, like he's cursing. Like it's just so authentic. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. And that you hit the key word right there. Yeah. The authenticity of that, and that may be why you specifically singled in on autobiographies and authors reading their own work, didn't you?
Yep.
Because sort of the authenticity of I wrote this and I'm reading it
Yeah.
goes way up. It's not faked.
Yeah.
Fascinating, fascinating. We'll see. We'll see where that goes. I wouldn't be surprised to see an audio newsletter kind of format for the same reason we were talking about the email
Yeah.
newsletter take off. Would I listen to Ben Thompson, rant on something for
Yeah.
20 minutes in the morning? Yeah, absolutely, I would.
Absolutely. And I think when you think about accessibility, like some people need to have things read to them. And like this would open up other avenues of ways people could experience your emails.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that could be exciting.
yeah, and the speaker brings more to it than what's in the text, right?
Yes, the emotion,
So,
the
yeah, emotion, emphasis, meaning, structure, all of that stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a whole nother whole set of layers on top of that. Well, we should probably wrap since I got to tie you up for almost half an hour more than I asked you for. April, it's been a delight to speak with you. If you had someone who's like, email's kind of interesting, maybe I should, where would you tell them to start?
Oh gosh, if they think email's kind of interesting, where would they start? Actually, I'd probably say email geeks. I feel like there's something
That
for
Slack channel?
everyone in there. Yeah. Because it's segmented by like the types of things.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a way to like you can go into depth, but you can also kind of dip your toe.
and lurk
And
and
there's also
listen.
yeah, and there's also a ton of um like different courses and things out there that are really interesting. At SparkPost, we have Send It School. So, you
There
know,
you go.
yeah, there's a lot of information out there. So,
Well, cool. Once again, my guest this morning was April Muller, Director of Brand, Yay, and Content Marketing at SparkPost. April, it was delightful to connect with you again and have a nice, far-ranging conversation, as I expected.
thank you so much, Dr. Dunn. It was great to chat with you and nerd out on things email and beyond.
Email and beyond. Thanks, April. We're
All
out.
right, take care. Bye.
Bye.